All right. So I had Skippie die. So the book opens, they're in a donut eating contest. Him and his friend Rupert, they're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then all of a sudden Skippie just starts seizing up on the ground. And he just starts rolling uncontrollably. And nobody knows what's going on, and everybody thinks he's choking on a donut. And we're on page 5 of a 650-page book. So then what happens after that is we have a ginormous 6-month flashback, and the question of how he died is unanswered. So I put this picture of Jesuit up here because Skippie goes to Seabrook High School. It's an all-boys boarding school in Dublin, Ireland. And Skippie is a nickname for Mr. Daniel Juster. So what I want you to keep in mind the whole time I'm presenting is that every character I tell you about is 14 years old. 14 years old. So we're about to talk about the perils of high school, something we all know a little bit too well by now in our last week. But I'm going to go ahead and give you the rundown of the book. After page 5, Skippie dies, we do a flashback and we're introduced to Carl, a 14-year-old drug dealer who deals to girls for Ritalin pills in return for sexual favors and money. We learn about Lori, who is romantically involved with Carl for the purpose of Ritalin diet pills. We learn about Coach Roche, who's Skippie's swim coach. And when Skippie gets injured in a swim meet, he goes in, talks to his coach, and Coach Roche actually gives him his own supply of Oxycontin to a 14-year-old. About 30 minutes later, he takes a couple Oxycontins, passes out, and gets sexually assaulted by his coach. Skippie ends up winning over Lori's love once he has these Oxycontins in his pocket. Lori, she's kind of like the drug addict get around school whore, I guess you could say. She'll go anywhere. She'll go anywhere where the pills are. So Skippie ends up getting Lori as his girl by winning her over in a fist fight with Carl. Lori convinces Skippie to quit the swim team. Keep in mind, Skippie has no knowledge of the sexual assault. He has no idea that it happened. He was completely passed out on oxys. Lori convinces Skippie to quit the swim team, in which Coach Roche calls Skippie's dad to figure out why, because he's worried about his own personal things. And that's when it's also revealed to the reader that Skippie's mom has cancer. So Skippie, he's going through quite a few things. Lori finds out that she needs more pills and ends up going back to Carl, where she has sex with him for pills while currently dating Skippie, where Carl films it and publicizes it. So that's something a lot of high schoolers can relate to, is like kind of I'm being serious. I mean, if you're talking about nudes and things like that in high school and that kind of stuff circulating around, that's exactly what happened here with Lori. One of a sex tape of her actually got released while she was dating Skippie. And then finally we are caught up to where we were at the beginning. So all in a matter of a couple of weeks, Skippie, he gets sexually assaulted. We find out his mom has cancer. His girlfriend cheats on him, in which there's public recording of that. And then all that culminates into this donut eating contest where we find out he actually OD'd on Oxycontin instead of dying from donuts. So then that's from that point on, the theme of the novel kind of turns into dealing with loss and how this community deals with loss. Carl, the drug dealer, he feels horrible. He begins to cut himself. He actually ends up getting involved with heroin. 14 years old, remember that. Lori, she becomes so crazed on pills, she lands herself in rehab. And then Coach Roche tries to atone for what he did, in which the principal of the school actually pushes it under the table with a non-disclosure agreement, in which it's never released. So this book is crazy. 14-year-olds doing crazy things. And finally, the climactic ending of the book, Carl ends up, the sexual assault gets out, but nobody knows who it was. And Carl believes that it was Father Green, another teacher at the school, and ends up burning down his classroom where he kills Father Green. And that's kind of the climactic ending to this whole book. So you got the rundown of the book. There's quite a bit going on, but I put the Jesuit in there because it's an all-boys boarding school. I put the pills in there because that's kind of like the underlying theme of the novel. So into my 5 research topics that I did my body paragraphs over. I did the loss of innocence, something we can all relate to. When you come to high school, you're no longer babied. Your eyes are opened wide. Things go crazy. My example for that was just we had a 14-year-old drug dealer, a 14-year-old drug addict, and just so much going on in this novel. The next one I did was the development of the brain. So we all kind of heard about it. We know that your brain doesn't stop developing until your mid-20s. So how that plays into high school, I talked about maturity level and being able to cope with adult situations as an adolescent. And I actually have a really great quote from my author. It says, "The achievement of maturity, psychologically speaking, might be said to be the realization and acceptance that we simply cannot live independently from the world, and so we must learn to live within it." So by saying that we have to cope with our surroundings, we have to develop our thought process of what we view the world as and things like that, because the world's not going to change just for us. The next one I did was the formation of morals. So you see I have a sexual encounter on the screen, you have drugs on the screen, things like that, things that you're always going to be introduced to in high school, and it's your choice on which path you're going to take on that. So, one of the things, I just wanted to throw this in my presentation, in the middle of the book there was a school orgy. Things like that. That shows the, yeah, I know, y'all are all shocked, y'all all look shocked, but at a school dance, the administrators walked away for a second and the punch bowl got spiked with a bunch of alcohol and Viagra. And it turned into a big school orgy. So that kind of shows the formation of morals throughout this book. The next part I did, the sexual aspect of high school. Everybody knows that high school is filled with a lot of sexual pressures. It's filled with a lot of firsts, a lot of things that happen for the first time, the first kiss, the first further, things like that. It's all dependent on your own high school career. But I did my research on this, on how the sexual aspect of high school takes a toll on the mental health of students and how they learn. So that was actually really interesting to learn about things like that. The last thing I did was drugs and alcohol. So a lot of these kids in this book, their outlet for all of their problems are found in drugs and alcohol. And I know, although not always obvious, a lot of high school kids do struggle with that. I put the drug abuse on there because the whole theme about this book was just the obsession with pills and just crazy amounts of pills going around. The alcohol wasn't as prevalent, but it was definitely a part of it. And just people thinking that they have no escape but to put themselves in another mindset by altering it with drugs and alcohol. So those were my 5 research topics for my crazy book, and that is the story of a bunch of 14-year-olds who have a lot of sex and do a lot of drugs.
Hell yeah.